All right, guys, welcome in. It's Brad with College SportsCast. We are here to do the SEC preview and prediction show. Check out our new intro. Hammonds with me tonight. What's going on, Hammonds?
What's up, man?
We are here to do the SEC. Finally, something we actually know, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We didn't have to study too hard for this one.
No,
All right, so we are College SportsCast. We are presented by the Fanboys. We are also featured on Let's Talk Sports, Sideline Sports, the Real Fresh channel, and we are in the comfort of your own home on WSBN TV Channel 30. Download the BoxCast app, search for World Sports Broadcasting Network on the BoxCast app on your Roku, Apple, or Fire TV. And then once you find World Sports Broadcasting Network, you can look us up, College SportsCast, on Channel 30. So let's dive right into this. We have 14 teams to do tonight. In the SEC, next year it's going to be 16.
Yeah, so.
Our first one tonight, we're doing them in alphabetical order. Our first one tonight is going to be Alabama.
The Crimson Tide.
Of course, Alabama's got Nick Saban. He's in his 17th year. He's won 194 ball games just at Alabama. That's just at Alabama. He's 6 wins away from 200. He is also 285 overall wins. He's 15 wins away from 300. Of course, he has 7 national championships, 6 with Alabama. They were 11-2 last year, went 6-2 in the SEC. They were 10-2 at the end of the season, didn't make the SEC championship game, but still was the 5th team in the college football playoff. The first team out.
You know what was surprising to me was last year that Alabama was not in the top 5 and run the football in the conference. That was very surprising to me. And yeah. I think they're going to get back to that, which they call it murder ball, where they just run over teams and just whip teams. I think Saban's going to go back to that. They
didn't have the best offensive line last year.
It wasn't the best, no.
Not for them. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't one of their better offensive lines.
Not Alabama standards anyways.
Right. That's what I mean. It wasn't one of their best offensive lines is kind of what I meant by that. So we're going to start out with talking about keys for the season. And I'll get that up here for us. So what do you got for keys for Alabama?
I think it's quarterback play. Quarterback play needs to be a lot better. And the biggest thing, the X factor to me, is the new offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees. He has he's going to develop a new starter under center. And I feel like that's going to determine whether or not Alabama wins the SEC championship or even goes to the college football playoff, to be honest, is developing that quarterback. Because, their defense is going to be really good.
Well, I mean, to be fair, they had Bryce Young, the number one overall pick last year, and Bryce Young was a heck of a quarterback.
He was, but
they just didn't have the receivers. They didn't have the receivers and the running backs last year to go with him.
No, it was a down year by Alabama standards.
They lost like 3 or 4 receivers to the draft.
Mm-hmm.
The year before that, and they really didn't have the receivers or running backs last year. It was basically the Bryce Young show.
It was. Bill Sizemore.
So we got Bill Sizemore on with
it. They
it.
lost to 2 top 10 teams on the road on last-second field goals, and people are acting like the sky is falling for them. It'd be nice to have those expectations. Exactly, Bill. You said what I said.
This is true, but we're talking about Alabama standards. I'm not talking about like rest of the college football standards. I'm just talking Alabama standards, Bill.
Exactly.
So that's what I meant by a couple of those statements.
I got a couple. It's
just Alabama standards.
I got a couple key guys that
you mentioned. Hang on just a minute. You mentioned the offense and the quarterback and Tommy Rees, the new offensive coordinator, as a key. One of my keys is they absolutely was out of character last year and had a ton of penalties in some games last year.
Tennessee,
they had like
Tennessee
14, 18, I think, one game.
The Tennessee game was rough.
They were uncharacteristic of a disciplined Saban team, and they got to get back to playing Saban football and not having all those turnovers. That's one of my keys was the turnovers. So I just wanted to bring that up. So transfers in and transfers out. I have Malik Benson, a wide receiver. I was just talking about they didn't quite have the wide receivers. I have him listed as the top transfer in, and they lost a offensive guard, Cohen, to Miami, and they also lost Tanner Bowles to Kentucky, an offensive guard. But he was a backup offensive guard. He was not a starter last year.
Mm-hmm. My 2 guys to watch is Kool-Aid McKinstry in the secondary. What a name.
Kool-Aid. I mean, what you got to with the name Kool-Aid. I mean,
Then they have Jace McClellan. He's a running back. He's going to steal a lot of snaps. And then you've got the guy that played opposite Will Anderson last year, Dallas Turner. I think he's going to be a big key for Alabama at the edge, at the defensive position. Well, so they're going to be solid on defense.
They will be. They will be for sure. And I think they'll actually be a little better than they were last year on defense, if you ask me.
Like you said, though, they got to improve on the penalties. The penalties is what killed them. In the LSU game, it hurt them. In the Tennessee game, there was a couple games.
It hurt them in that Texas game too.
In the Texas game, they was out of position at times. They was making boneheaded plays. I remember one in particular. There was a boneheaded play in the Tennessee game, and Saban was absolutely losing his mind on TV. He was going absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. It's just very uncharacteristic of a Saban-led team.
Of Saban, yeah.
Yeah, and so, you can't mention Alabama without mentioning their quarterbacks. Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, Buckner, whoever is running that offense is going to be a key player for Alabama. I think, it's going to be Jalen Milroe to at least start the season. I think we'll probably see some Ty Simpson. And the first game, because the second game is Texas. So, I think we'll see some of both. And then he'll make a decision on who is starting for Texas, and that may be, depending on how they do against Texas, that may be the final decision.
Mm-hmm.
All right, key game.
I'm going to say Texas. Last year Alabama looked up and
second
won that
game of the year.
Should have won it. Should have lost it last year. The actual Texas game should have lost that game.
Well, Bryce Young brought them back by himself.
They did. He was basically the one-man wrecking crew. So I think this is a key game early. Yeah. If Saban wants to make a statement, that Alabama's back, I think they're going to need a big game from this game. It's going to be a big, key, monster game starting out the year.
It's September the 9th. It's coming up pretty soon. It's not this Saturday, but next Saturday. It is in Tuscaloosa. Bill's talking about one of their edge defensive line guys being back there. So I wanted to put that up on the screen. But, this Texas game is a major key game. With it being a home game, Texas coming to the SEC next year, it's a statement game.
Yeah, it's going to give us a little taste of what the SEC is going to be about next year. So
for both teams, actually.
Yeah,
for both teams, actually. But being at home, it's a game Bama, I feel like, has to win.
They do. I agree.
Going through the SEC. To have a chance in the playoff. That's what I mean. Let's look at their schedule. We got Middle Tennessee this Saturday. Then we got the Texas game. Then they play at USF. Then Ole Miss at home. Then at Mississippi State. At Texas A&M will be a tough one. Arkansas at home. Tennessee at home. LSU at home. At Kentucky. Chattanooga at home. And then at Auburn is how they close the year out. I have their win total, betting win total from DraftKings. I have it set at 10. Do you think that Alabama goes over, under, or do they match that?
I think they match the 10. But I think the biggest game to me is Texas. If you win that Texas game, you get a leg start in the college football playoff race.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think this Bama team is going to be better than last year's team. I really do. Saban has an axe to grind from last year, and he's usually really, really damn good at that.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to go. I don't have them 12-0, but I do have them 11-1. That's where I think they will go. And towards the end of the show, we'll talk about who gets in championship game and all that kind of stuff. But I do have Bama setting at 11-1. I think they win the Texas game at home and drop one in the SEC along the way.
Yeah, they'll drop one somewhere.
Yeah. That's what I have for Bama this year. Our next team we're going to talk about is Arkansas. Got the Hogs on the schedule.
The Hogs.
So let's talk some Hogs.
Let's talk some Hogs.
Some Hogs. They went 7-6 last year. They went 7-6 last year, 3-5 in the SEC. They started out a lot better. KJ Jefferson got hurt kind of mid-season, and it affected their season. I think they dropped like 4 or 5 of their last so many games. and it kind of affected their season. But Sam Pittman is in his 4th year. He's been there 3 years. He's 19-17 as a coach. And they got KJ Jefferson back. They picked up quite a few wideouts in the transfer portal. They did really well in the transfer portal, by the way. And they have Rocket Sanders back as their running back. So, I mean, they return
Dwayne McLaughlin. They get that good LSU transfer back. They get him back in the secondary.
They return some good pieces. So, where do you have keys for the season?
My keys to the season is this. Please make a play on defense. Last year, they was the worst in school history at giving up yardage. And it didn't help none that they had key guys out. There was guys that got hurt, but they're like, yeah, Bill just said it for me. Their front seven is a big question. Defensively, they're going to have to be better. You can't give up 300, 400 yards every single week.
My keys is third down stops.
Yeah,
that's my key is third down stops. It's similar to what you're talking about. I just wanted to throw it in there. They gave up over 45% conversion on third downs last year. And, you've got to cut that by at least 10%.
You do. And another key to their season, I think, is keeping KJ Jefferson healthy, because I think he's probably one of the bigger players on your team. You got Rocket Sanders back there.
It's hard to keep a running quarterback healthy.
It is. I agree.
It is.
It's tough.
It's hard to keep a running quarterback, especially in the SEC, man. These guys are big, strong, and super fast.
And I know Arkansas wants to they're wanting to aim higher, but at the same time, if you look at the front of their schedule and behind it, it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. And, 7 wins, 8 wins would be a decent season for Arkansas with this schedule.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree with that 100%. All right, so transfers in and transfers out. I've already said they picked up a ton of good transfers. I mean, we could sit here and go through a list of about 10 guys that's going to help them out, but I'm not going to do that. It takes up too much time. I got Jeff Coat, the defensive end from Missouri. I got him as the top transfer. That's who I picked. You can pick somebody else, but that's who I picked. And then they lost their Trey Knox, their tight end, to South Carolina, actually, which is within the conference and a big loss for them in the transfer portal. Is there somebody else transferring in you want to mention? Because they got a bunch of them. So,
not really.
All right, key player.
I got Rocket Sanders.
Or key players.
I got Rocket Sanders and KJ Jefferson. They could probably take over a game each and every single Saturday, every series. If we're being brutally honest about it, they're the key to the Arkansas season, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I fully agree with you on that. I mean, KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders, both of them are going to be 100% keys, key players for them. Another one that I want to mention is a wide receiver, a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman. Satigna. I'm not sure how you say it. Isaiah is his first name. I think he's going to be – he was a 4-star recruit, and I think he's going to be a big key. You'll see him in the offense a lot. Just want to throw that name out. Key game. What do you think's a key game for their season down in Woo Pig Suey Land?
I would say the first game, but they're playing Western Carolina, so that's not really a big game, to be honest. I think their biggest game to me is the Texas A&M game. And I'll tell you why. Because last year they let that game slip. They let that game out of their hands. That was a game that they should have won.
I got the LSU game on the 23rd, September 23rd. It's at LSU.
I feel like there's a few games in there where they're real big for Arkansas because 7-8 wins is going to be tough for the Hogs this year with the schedule that they got.
They lost to LSU last year, but they lost 13-10 at home.
They did,
and
close.
If KJ Jefferson can make a play or two, extra, they win that game. Arkansas is really close and got some pieces, so I think that's an important game. The A&M game is important as well. So they got a few of them.
They do.
Matter of fact, we'll look at their schedule real quick, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So they start out with Western Carolina at home, Kent State at home. Then they play BYU at home, who is now a Power 12, Power 5 conference.
Then they go to LSU. Then they play
at LSU. Texas A&M in Arlington. Mm-hmm. Then they're at Ole Miss, at Alabama, Mississippi State at home, at Florida, Auburn at home, FIU at home, and Missouri at home is how they close out the season. But in the middle, you got BYU, LSU, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, Mississippi State. That's the middle of their schedule.
It's Tonkers.
I have their win total. Looking at DraftKings, I have their win total set at 7. That's where I have them set, is at 7. Do you think they match, go over, or go under 7 wins?
I think they go on the 7 because the only way they get 8, I think, is they got to win one of the Florida or Mississippi State games. They got to win one of those to get to 8, I think. And for Arkansas,
so I have them starting the season out, pretty strong.
For Arkansas State, they play. I have them starting the season
out pretty strong. They do. They play Mississippi State at home. They play Missouri at home. They play at Florida. I don't think Florida's going to be that great of a team this year. It's a game they could win in the swamp. It's a game they could win in the swamp.
It's still the swamp.
It is still the swamp.
It's not
absolutely.
It's not an easy place to play.
I agree with that, and I'm with you on this. I actually have them setting at 7 and 5. Mm-hmm. I do believe that they could get to 8 and 4 with one of those wins that we were just talking about. 8 and 4 is not out of the realm of possibility for them. So, 8 and 4 would be a really good season for Arkansas, for Sam Pittman, for the fans. So that's where I have them at. Our next team that we're going to cover, guys, is going to be Auburn. Again, if you're wondering, I'm doing these in alphabetical order, my alphabetical order, and you'll see what I'm talking about in a few minutes. I said Ole Miss instead of Mississippi. So, but this is my alphabetical order.
I'm going to give you
Auburn.
I'm going to give you a key stat. Auburn had the worst turnover differential in the league last year, okay? And Peyton Thorne, their new quarterback, transferred from Michigan State, had 11 interceptions last year. That don't bode well for the offensive.
He's had 21 interceptions in the last 2 years with Michigan State.
Yeah, and another thing too.
All right,
Hugh
so
Freeze
Auburn
is back.
Auburn's bringing
Hugh Freeze
in.
is back in the SEC.
They're
The
bringing
thing
in
about
Hugh
Hugh Freeze, they need to beat one of their rivals starting out to get back to Auburn football, and starting with Ole Miss would be a first, because they've had some tough times the last couple of years. I think beating a rival would really help their cause this year. Getting the 6 wins would help their cause after the last 2 or 3 years they've had.
Oh yeah, I mean, getting the 6 wins would absolutely help them. So, keys to the season. I've got one of the things that you just mentioned. Stop with all the turnovers. You can't have that many turnovers in the SEC and be ultra competitive. You just can't. It won't work. You can't do that. Not in the SEC. I mean, it's just it's dog eat dog world in the SEC.
Yeah, it's
and
every single week.
I mean, honestly, you cannot do that. They absolutely have to stop with all the turnovers. Their biggest gain and loss in the transfer portal. I'm gonna give you a couple of names. I think their biggest gain. I know they've got Peyton Thorne from Michigan State, but I'm gonna give you a name: Justin Rogers, defensive tackle from Kentucky.
I think he'll be a big.
I think he's going to be a big help along that defensive line. Justin Rogers was a 4 or 5 star. I can't remember now. I know he was 4. He might have been a 5-star.
He was a 5, I think. He was a 5.
He was either a 4 or 5-star. He was way up there.
I'm going to say this about Hugh Freeze. He's coming back to the SEC, and they're saying, well, he's not going to do this, he's not going to do that. Well, if Hugh Freeze can go to Liberty and do what he did at Liberty, he did it at Ole Miss. We saw it plenty at Ole Miss, but there was a lot of things that went on at Ole Miss.
He's a great recruiter, man. The dude knows how to get players.
He knows how to build an SEC program. And I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to get it out there to the Auburnites, John Roberts, everybody that's out here listening. Auburn's going to win a game that nobody's supposed to pick them to win. They're going to upset somebody. I just don't know who. They're going to beat somebody.
The only thing about Freeze, and I'll say this, Freeze sometimes has a hard time walking a line to keep things on the up and up.
Yeah, that's the biggest.
He has in the past. We will see if he has learned some lessons and knows how to do that now that he has landed an upper echelon tier job again, like Auburn. So, biggest loss, I got their defensive end, Mamba, that left and went to Purdue.
Mm-hmm. Mine,
I think, is how you pronounce his last name.
My biggest loss for them, though, is Tank Bigsby. I think they're going to really want to miss him as a running back. That's – I know. Yeah. I know they got
who graduated, though, right?
Yeah. I know they got Brian Beatty. He's coming in. I think he's going to replace Auburn at running back. But I think losing Tank Bigsby hurt a little bit, especially in the run game.
Yeah. Key players, you have to mention Peyton Thorne. He was named the starting quarterback about a week ago. Now, my question is this. Robbie Ashford, who took over the starting job last year and was kind of projected to be the starter this year until they got a late transfer in Peyton Thorne. Peyton Thorne's won the job, but Robbie Ashford's really, really athletic.
He is.
Do they
But
find
the
a way to
biggest
get him on?
issue-
Do they find a way to get him on the field?
Well, the biggest issue with Robbie Ashford, I think, is his throwing ability. Don't get me wrong, he's a great dual threat, but getting the ball down.
I'm not necessarily talking about his throwing. I'm talking about his running, his ability, his athletic.
I think they'll use him some.
I think Auburn needs that.
I do. I think they'll use him some because Auburn's done that in the past with guys like Cam Newton. They've done it with the other few guys that they had. The dual threat breakability. So
right.
I think they'll use him some.
That's what I was kind of getting at.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Key game. What do you have as a key game? I'll tell you what I got to start with. And mine's
I'll
early.
Be honest with you.
They're going out to California. They're going out to California the second week of the season. California was not very good last year. Okay. They were pretty trash, to be honest with you. They cannot go out there. They did pick up a TCU quarterback. They actually named him quarterback about 4 or 5 days ago. Sam Jackson, actually, not Samuel L. Jackson, but Sam Jackson is his name. But, I think it's Cal. I mean, I think that's a really, really important game at the start of the season.
I think it's UMass. I know UMass is not.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because you want to get off in the SEC on the right foot. You don't want to come into this game and lose this kind of game early in the year because it clouds up everything as a fan base. You get what I'm saying? It's Hugh Freeze's first year. You want to get things off on the right foot. You don't want to have UMass sit around and hang around to the third or fourth quarter and have an upset on your hands and lose that game and then try to bring the fan base back in after a loss like that. You know what I mean? I feel like this is a big moment for the Auburn fans to have an opportunity to win this game, get off on the right foot, and get him started in coaching at Auburn. I think that's a huge game to me. I think it's not the biggest game, but I think it's a huge game.
Well, I mean, so you got the first game and I got the second game. They're both non-conference games, and they're games that they need to win.
They do.
They need to get off on the right foot, and I think they will actually.
I do.
I do. All right, let's look at their schedule. So they start out playing home at UMass. They go at California, then home Sanford. Then they play at Texas A&M. Then they get Georgia at home, at LSU, Ole Miss at home, Mississippi State at home, at Vandy, at Arkansas, New Mexico State, and then they end with Alabama at home.
I'll say this.
That's their schedule.
If you want to get a bowl game in this juncture, you got to win the games you're supposed to win. You got to win the games against.
I got them at 6. I got it set at 6.5.
You got to beat California.
6.5 is where I got it.
You got to beat Sanford. You got to beat New Mexico State, and you got to hope maybe they upset
New Mexico State
team, and then you got to beat Vandy. I mean, if we was Vandy last week, they're not. I don't think they're as good as they was last year, to be honest. But that's a game they need to win.
Right. So
they've
got some winnable games in there.
They do, and I think you're going to see Hugh. I'm going to call it the Hugh Freeze special. There's going to be that one game where he's going to come out and he's going to light it up. And I just don't know which game it is. That's what I said. There'll be a game they win that nobody expects them to. But like I said, I think
they go under 6.5. You got them at 6. You got them at 7.
I got them at 6. I think it'll be 6 wins.
All right. I think they will go 6-6, but a Hugh Freeze led offense, it would not surprise me if they wind up 7-5.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of.
I mean, Hugh Freeze can definitely coach some offense. He can scheme it up. So he will definitely be doing that. Our next team that we're going to cover, guys, is Florida. Florida, of course, is Billy Napier in his second year. They were 6-7 last year. They went 3-5 in the SEC. I'm
going to
give you a stat here about.
Okay, I'll let you give yours. And then
hang on, I'm going to give you a stat here about Florida. I'm going to give you a stat about Florida that's going to surprise some people. The last time that Florida had back-to-back losing seasons was 1978 and 79. Okay? Guess what just happened? In 21 and 22, they had back-to-back losing seasons. The first time that's happened at Florida since 78 and 79.
And I'm going to give you my stat. They allowed 175 yards per game rushing last year, and they gave up 25-plus points per game. Now listen to this. Per game in 3 years. That's not good.
Wow.
Defense is going to have to be shored up, which I think they're going to be okay. Their front four is going to be a lot better this year. They got some monsters on that front line. I think the offense is going to be better, which that brings me to my point, key players. I think Trevor Etienne is going to be a key player for them. The running back, he showed flashes last year, especially in that Kentucky game. Then they get Graham Mertz, the transfer from Wisconsin. The biggest issue I have with Graham Mertz is he had the most turnovers by a quarterback in the Big Ten. And
that's even more than Peyton Thorne, by the way, that we just talked about.
You do that, you transfer that to the SEC, it's going to get a lot worse for you. And I think it'll be better, but you can't do things he did at Wisconsin at Florida. It won't be cut and dry in the SEC.
Well, I'm going to give you key to the season for me. They have the backs. They have some really good running backs.
They do.
I'm kind of iffy on Graham Mertz, to be honest with you. He was named the starter. I'm actually kind of iffy on Napier as a coach in the SEC.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know.
They better attempt to run the ball a whole lot with those running backs.
You know what I heard today? I heard a hot take today. Now, this was coming from a Florida fan, somebody that I've known quite a while. He said that if they go under the 5 wins, well, I wouldn't say 5, but if they hit that 6-6 bowl and can't get, he said, I wouldn't be shocked if they fire Billy Napier.
Oh, I wouldn't be shocked at all. This is Florida, guys. I mean, they don't, like I said, they haven't had back-to-back losing seasons since 1978 and 1979. They don't lose like that. Okay.
Bill brings up a good point. Their play calling has to get better this year. The screen calls a game last year.
That's why I said I'm not sold on Napier as an offensive coach. I mean, I'm just not sold on him yet. Now he is recruiting better. He's got a recruiting class that's going to be coming in this next year.
Next year, yeah.
it may be too late. I mean, I don't know. I'm just not so sure yet. So transfers in and transfers out. I got linebacker Mitchell from Ohio State as a top transfer in. And their biggest loss is a offensive tackle to USC. Tarquin was his name. Is his name, and he went out to USC. All right, key players. You got Graham Mertz. I mean, you have to mention Graham Mertz. He is named the starter over Jack Miller, the sophomore quarterback, and he is going to have to step up and lead this offense without turnovers.
We'll find out
without
Thursday
a bunch
night.
of turnovers.
We'll find out Thursday when they play Utah.
Key game. Yeah. They start out Thursday night. 2 nights from now, they play at Utah. So we'll find out a whole bunch. I did not list that as the key game, although it is a key game for Florida. I listed the Tennessee game.
My key game's Kentucky. And I'll tell you why.
Kentucky's a good choice, too.
And the reason why I picked Kentucky game is because you lose to Utah, and then you come out and you lose a couple of these games to Tennessee.
They played Tennessee too before us.
But that's what I'm saying. You can't afford to lose a bunch right off the bat right there. Because if you do, you might not make a bowl game.
I'm not so sure that they do make a bowl game. I'm just going to be honest with you. So I think it's Tennessee. It's in the swamp, and it's September the 16th, and they got to go to Utah. They can't afford to lose at Utah and lose at home in the swamp to Tennessee.
No.
I mean, they just can't.
If they expect to have a decent year.
I've got the Tennessee. Now, listen, Florida fans will say it's the Kentucky game probably because we've won 3 out of 5. And I love it, okay? I'm a Kentucky fan. I love it. But I think these 2 games before the Kentucky game are going to be major keys to turn their season that they just cannot afford to lose before the Kentucky game. All right. Johnson and ETM, they're 2 running backs. I'm telling you, they absolutely have to use them up this year. Their schedule. Let's take a look. They play at Utah. They play McNeese. Then they play Tennessee at home, Charlotte at home, at Kentucky, Vanderbilt at home, at South Carolina, Georgia in Jacksonville, Arkansas at home, at LSU, at Missouri, and then they end the season Florida State at home. So I'm going to be honest with you. I have their win total set at 7. That's pretty low for Florida standards, but I have their win total set at 7. Where do you have them going? Do they make a bowl? Do they go under that 6-6?
I have them at 6-6. I mean, you look at the schedule, man.
6-6.
Used to you could look at this schedule and you say, "Oh, Kentucky's a cakewalk, Vandy's a cakewalk, all these other teams are cakewalks." But you just can't. You can't take for granted Kentucky. Kentucky's not your headed stepchild sister that you beat around the bush every single year. It ain't happening.
Not anymore.
And Vanderbilt, if I recall, they lost to Vanderbilt last year. And
they did.
I mean,
now they get Vandy at home in the swamp this time.
These games ain't gimmies. These games ain't gimmies anymore, especially with these top schedules. So give me 6-6, the Florida Gators.
I'll be honest with you. That's what I've got them too, is 6-6. I'm just not all that impressed with them. I got them losing the Utah game. I think they'll lose to Tennessee. I think they'll lose to Kentucky. They won't beat Georgia. They won't beat Florida State at the end of the season. And that means they got to play Arkansas and LSU. I mean, I'm just not sure that, so 6-6 is about all I can give them. I mean, when you look at their schedule, I mean, I think that's about all you can give them. If they go 7-5, it'll be a miracle.
Yeah,
I think, with their schedule and the way things have gone for them.
Yeah.
All right, our next team is the two-time defending champs,
Georgia,
going for an unprecedented three-peat. The Georgia Bulldogs. So, you got Kirby Smart. They're 29-1 in their last 30 games. They went 15-0 last year. They're the two-time defending champs. What else can you say about what Kirby Smart has done? He's entering his 8th year. He's 81-15 at Georgia.
My biggest
that's his record.
My biggest concern with this team is how do you top it? Like, it's impressive to me what they've done, but just how do you top off the last 2 years? Like, to be honest, it's unheard of. And I'm not so sure that this team is better than they was last year. I think they kind of went down, to me, in my opinion now, with the offensive coordinator hire with Mike Bobo. I don't think that's a good hire, but we'll find out. I think he's a little conservative, but a lot more conservative than the one they had before. But I don't know. I'm gonna let you have this one because,
I mean, I'll be honest with you. There's not much you can say to improve what Georgia's done. Okay,
exactly.
I mean, a key to this season. I'll give you a couple of them. Okay, replacing Stetson Bennett and the job that he has done the last 2 years is a tall order.
The mailman,
Carson
baby.
Beck has been named the starting quarterback. He has really big shoes to fill.
Wow.
He's got to find Bowers and McConkey, and get to his playmakers as much as possible. And then my second key is they've got some injuries and they're a little thin at running back.
Mm-hmm.
In the preseason, in the fall camp, they had somebody with a knee injury. They've got another running back that's hurt that probably won't be playing the first 2 or 3 games of the season. He's got an MCL strain. He probably at least will be out for 2 or 3 games. They're a little thin at running back, and I think those are 2 keys that you could see Georgia maybe falling back just a smidgen, and I'm talking just a smidgen. Okay,
not a lot, no.
I'm not talking about a lot here. So transfers in, I got a wide receiver, Lovett from Missouri, and of course their biggest loss to me was Barry Alexander, defensive tackle that went to USC. Like, he was a freshman. He's a sophomore this year out there. He's already played a game. I know USC gave up a lot of yards and stuff, but Barry Alexander was a bear, honestly, in that game. At his position, he was there. Like, he really is a bear. His parents done an absolute fantastic job naming this kid, by the way.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say. I don't know how they did it, But they looked at him and be like, man, that's a bear right there.
That's a bear right there, bro.
And it worked out. That's all I'm going to say. Key players. It's got to be Carson Beck.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's got to be a quarterback. You know, he's having to replace Stetson Bennett and go in there and do what Stetson Bennett's done the last couple of years. That's a tall task, man.
And Stetson Bennett takes so much criticism. The dude was 29-1 with 2 titles the last 2 years. I mean, I think he's one of the best quarterbacks college football has seen in the last 20 years.
I agree.
I mean, the numbers don't lie. And I'm not talking about the stat numbers and stuff. I'm talking about as a leader and what he's done on the field.
Yeah, what he brings to the team.
I mean, you look at Tim Tebow, maybe it would be better, but I mean, Manziel had better stuff, but he didn't win he didn't win 2 titles.
I'll say this with Georgia, they're going to be trying to become the first to win 3 titles in a row since 1936. That's
exactly, guys.
That's company, man.
Yes,
that's elite company. And
man, I'm telling you, if
it happens,
hardly anybody alive. My dad is 73 years old, and that was 14 years before he was born.
So,
okay, that's how long ago this is. All right. Key players: Brock Bowers, and Brock Bowers. Besides Carson Beck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have a bunch on the defensive side of the ball too.
Mm-hmm.
But man, and McConkey, I mentioned him as a wide receiver. He's really good. Get them the ball. Somehow get them the ball. All right, key game. What do you have as their key game?
I think Bill pretty much said it. The Auburn game's probably going to be a big game. The Tennessee game probably going to be a big game. It's in Knoxville this year.
Tennessee game's the one I got. It's
I think
at Tennessee. It's not to the second to last game of the year.
Yeah, I think the Tennessee game's huge, though.
Yeah. That's what I got. All right, take a quick look at their schedule. UT Martin, Ball State, play South Carolina at home, UAB at home, at Auburn, Kentucky at home, at Vandy, Florida and Jacksonville, Missouri at home, Ole Miss at home, at Tennessee, and at Georgia Tech.
I think the Auburn game
murder's row.
I think the Auburn game could be kind of a trap game in a way. Because you're mixing
Auburn
it in there
and Kentucky.
Yeah, it could be. You just don't really know how teams are going to come out until they start playing. So, I think
those are the 2 games, like games 5 and 6.
That early, yeah.
Yeah. That would be my 2 games that could trip them up. Maybe. I don't think Kentucky wins. By the way, I don't want any of the fans, coming out and say Brad said Kentucky's going to beat Georgia. That is not what Brad said, just so you know. That is not what Brad said. I've got their win total set at 11. With that record, with Georgia being the 2-time champs, do you think they have a chance of going over that in the regular season?
No, I don't. I mean, there's a chance, but I think they'll win it all again. I just until you beat them, they're still the champs. I mean, it's plain.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
It's plain and simple.
I think they might drop one game. I think they might actually at 11-1. It's possible. Now, can they go 12-0? Of course they can.
Yeah.
But I think they might drop one and go 11-1.
Yeah.
The Tennessee game on the road,
That's
the Auburn game
one.
on the road are going to be two tougher games that they play.
I think so.
So we'll see how that plays out. But I think it's possible that they could draw. So we have Kentucky coming up next. Of course, we got Mark Stoops. He's in his 11th year, if you can believe that. He's the second longest tenured coach in the SEC.
I'll say this.
He's won 66 games, 59 losses. We were 7-6 last year, kind of underachieved last year, went 3-5 in the SEC. I'll let you go. Go ahead about Kentucky.
I'll say this, a key stat. The offensive line was one of the worst in the country last year. It was last in SEC in sacks allowed and average yards per rush. The X factor with Kentucky this year, to me, is how Devin Leary and Liam Cohen attack this offensive unit. I think that's the X factor. I think the defense is going to be really good, but it's all about getting the ball to your playmakers. Last year we couldn't do that. Offensive line struggled at times. They gave up a lot of sacks. I think the offensive line is going to be improved. But if they give Devin Leary time, I don't see how this Kentucky offense can't be as good as anybody in the country, because Devin Leary proved that at NC State.
So, keys to the season, you're absolutely right. Liam Cohen and his offense with Devin Leary running it is an absolute gold mine of pickups, to be quite honest with you. And, 2 years ago, we averaged 32.3 points a game. Last year, we averaged 20.4.
I'm going to say this,
12
and
points less.
I'm not going to drag the guy.
With Cohen and Leary, that 30.
Scangarello, I'm not going to drag him because it was just.
We have to get to that 30-point mark.
All I'm saying is he wasn't the fit to me. Nothing that was done right was
right.
It was just screwy from the beginning. It was just one of those hires that you just goofed up on.
But I got one more thing. On the offense. We actually have to convert in the red zone way better than we did last year. Red zone last year was terrible.
Yeah, it was bad. Yeah.
It was terrible. So when we get there, we have to convert a ton better in the red zone.
Mm-hmm.
Kicking game and all that was horrendous. People want to talk about the offensive line. The offensive line sucked. The offensive line sucked. The kicking game was horrendous.
Hey, it won us a game at Missouri. It won us a game at Missouri, though.
Oh, God.
Oh, my goodness.
It's horrendous. All right, Devin Leary transfer in. He's the biggest transfer in for Kentucky. Absolutely. There's no question about that. Justin Rogers, I have as a defensive tackle, is the biggest loss. That's what I have.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Key players besides we've already talked about Devin Leary and Cohen and, so who do you have as a key player besides them?
J.J. Weaver's a big key to this defense. I'd say Barry and Brown. But if we're really going to really go to it, I think it's the run game. I think it's Ray Davis. I think Ray Davis has got to have a big year this year. The run game wasn't what it was last year. I think the running game needs to be a lot better this year, and I think we will under Ray Davis. Ray Davis was a 1,000-yard rusher at Vanderbilt, so I think he'll come in. He'll do just fine at running back.
He was. I got Marquez Cox, offensive left tackle. He's going to be the left tackle from Northern Illinois, 6'5", 315 pounds. He's been a 4-year starter. I got him as an absolute key player on that offensive line. And the defense, guys, is going to be Brad White is an absolute genius. I'm going to give him the credit that he deserves here on our show anyway. He is the best returning defensive coordinator in the SEC. I'm tired of people saying Matt House, who used to be here, by the way, at LSU. It's Brad White. Period. End of story. Georgia lost their DC. Alabama lost theirs. 5 years straight, he's had a top 5 defense in the SEC. He's the only returning defensive coordinator, or the only defensive coordinator in the SEC that can say that. So I just want to get that out there. Bill says Brad White's the GOAT. He's the best defensive coordinator in the SEC. Yes, I said it. And John is just quiet as a mouse. All right, key game. What do you have as a key game for Kentucky this year?
I think it's the Missouri game because you look at the schedule, you got an opportunity to go 5-0 going to Georgia, right? Well, you lose the Georgia game, you'll be 5-1, right? Well, you lose the Missouri game, you'll be 5-2. And then you're going on a bye and you're coming back to play Tennessee. You can't drop that Missouri game. You have to do everything in your power to win that game. Because I think that makes a difference because you're sandwiching Georgia between that Missouri game and Tennessee. And you can't afford – you got to at least win one of those if you want to go to a bigger bowl, I think.
Well, the game before the Georgia game and the Florida game is always a pretty big game at home in Kentucky. That stadium's going to be rocking. I was there 2 years ago at Kroger Field when we beat Florida for the first time at home in a long time, in 30-some years. It was a fun game to be at. And I'm going to be, I really feel like that it's either the Florida game or the Tennessee game. And they're both home games.
They are.
And I know we play Alabama like the second or third last game of the year. And it's at home, and it's huge, okay? We get them. They haven't been at our place in a long time, and it's huge. But we're Kentucky fans, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm sick as hell of Tennessee beating us. And I'm just going to say it out. I'm sick as hell of it. So, so it's at home. It's a game with the fans that we should have a chance to win. I'm not saying we're going to win it. I'm saying we should have a chance.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a look at the schedule. Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, and Akron are the first three at home. Then they go at Vandy, Florida at home, at Georgia, Missouri at home, open date, then Tennessee at home, at Mississippi State, which is always a tough game for Kentucky, Alabama at home, at South Carolina, and at Louisville is how Kentucky closes out the season. 7.5 is the win total on DraftKings.
No way, man.
Do you have it? Huh?
I said there's no way. As much talent as this team's got this year, this is the most talent Stoops has had this year.
That's what the win total is on. That's what the.
I'm going to be honest with you. I never drink the Kool-Aid, but I'm going to this year. They're going 9-3.
All right. So John knows we did a show last year. I totally drank the Kool-Aid last year. Okay.
You drank it last year. I didn't.
I did though. I hyped them up. I thought we were going 10-2. I picked 10-2 last year. Here's my thing. I think we're sitting at 5-1. I think we actually go to 6-1, and I think our season comes down to 4 games. Okay, I'm just going to give you a quick little thing here about Kentucky. I think it comes down to 4 games. You got Tennessee and Alabama at home, and Mississippi State and South Carolina on the road. And I'm not including Louisville in this, because in Brom's first year, we should kick their butt. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to include them in this. But it comes down to 4 games, okay? If we could find a way to split Tennessee and Alabama, Mississippi State away, and South Carolina away, that's 4 games. If we could find a way to split those 4 games, then there is a path to 9-3. There definitely is a path to 9-3. However, since I drank the Kool-Aid last year, I'm going to be a little bit conservative with my pick this year. I'm going 8-4 for Kentucky. I really think there's a chance that we can do better than that. I think there is a small chance that we can go 10-2, but that's what I picked last year, and I'm not drinking that Kool-Aid quite yet. So in this preseason show, I'm going 8-4. I reserve the right to change my mind along the way because I am a Kentucky fan. But so that's where I got Kentucky on the prediction and the record. All right, next in line is LSU. Of course, they got Brian Kelly. In his second year, they went 10-4, 6-3, actually won the West last year.
I'll say this.
Probably.
I believe that LSU has one of the best linebackers in the country, and Harold Perkins. He was a freshman,
really good defensive players.
He was a freshman All-American, All-SEC.
Yeah.
They get 8 starters back on the offensive line, including the offensive line, plus
this was for Kentucky, for Jerry
Malik Neighbors. They get him. They get Jaden Daniels back. This might be the best LSU team we've seen since Joe Burrow. Now, don't twist my words. Now, it's not Joe Burrow level yet. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this is the best LSU team that we'll see since 2019 in terms of talent.
I'm not completely sold on Jalen Daniels. I know that you look at the Heisman stuff and everything, and his name is out there pretty prominent in it, in the odds and stuff, and he's being talked about, but he struggled some early last year. He didn't trust his receivers. He ran the ball an awful lot last year. And I don't believe I'm not 100% sold that he is quite as good a quarterback that the whole world wants you to believe. And I'm not saying he's not. I'm not quite there yet. So I think the key to their season is they have to find a way to run the ball without using Jaden Daniels as your top running back.
Yeah, that was a big key last year.
He was their leading rusher. Okay, you can't do that. I don't think you can do that and survive a 11-1, 12-0 type season to win the West again. You're not winning the West 9-3 or 9-4, whatever they were last year, because they were 10-4. So you're not winning the West like that. Not again. You won't do that 2 years in a row. Got to find a running game and a running back.
Well, and another thing too, there's only 4 starters coming back from last year's group on defense. So the defense is going to have to get better too. The defense struggled some last year as well, but
they do have 2 stars with Mason Smith and Harold Perkins.
You got Harold Perkins and Mason Smith in there. You got a pretty good team, regardless of how the rest of it boils out. You're going to be better.
Transfer in to go kind of with that. Omar Spates, he was a linebacker from Oregon State. He transferred in. I've got Walker Howard transferring to Ole Miss as their biggest loss. I know he wasn't their starter, but he played some last year. And has started a game or two. So I put him as their biggest transfer loss. Key players, we've already mentioned a whole bunch of them, with Harold Perkins, Mason Smith, Jalen Daniels, Neighbors. So, we've already mentioned a whole bunch of them, I think, for them. So let's go on to key game. What do you got as their key game?
I think it's FSU. That early in the year, I get it. It's early, but I think that's going to have a lot to say whether LSU stays in the race or not in the top, for a playoff spot, because the winner gets a heads up. And the loser
they lost that game. But they lost that game last year and still wound up there at the end.
Yeah,
had a chance. I mean, they lost.
They're expecting a lot more this year, though. That's the biggest difference, I think.
I mean, I've got it at Alabama. I think that's their biggest game on the schedule. At Alabama, November 4th. That's what I got. All right. Look at their schedule. They start out with Florida State. Then they play Grambling State, at Mississippi State, Arkansas at home, at Ole Miss, at Missouri, Auburn at home, Army at home, open date at Alabama, Florida at home, Georgia State at home, and Texas A&M at home to close out the year.
Mm-hmm.
I've got their win total set at 9.5.
Mm-hmm.
I really think I feel like this LSU team goes 10-2.
I do too.
I know that some people I've got them. I think some people have them possibly winning the West and going to the championship game, but I've got them 10-2 is where I've got this LSU team.
Yeah.
Is that where you said you got them too?
Yeah, that's where I had them.
All right, the next one we're going to talk about is Mississippi State. Mississippi State, new coach, Zach Arnett. They lost Mike Leach last December. It's a big loss for Mississippi State. It's a big loss for college football, to be quite honest with you. But I've heard some good things about Zach Arnett. He was their defensive coordinator, a good defensive coordinator. He was under Mike Leach, and I've heard some good things in camp. Their offense is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be quite the air raid.
It's going to be more of a run-centric offense.
Yeah.
I think they got the new.
So what do you have as a
They got him from the offensive coordinator from App State, Kevin Barbie. So I think, it's going to be a completely different setup than it was last year in terms of the air raid and whatnot. But my keys to the season is Will Rogers. I think he's a plus for this team. I think this year, though, to me, they're going to probably run the ball a lot more. They're not going to. I mean, they'll pass some.
Do they have the backs to do that? Because Leach didn't run the ball much, and he didn't have a whole lot there.
They get Marks back. He was pretty good last year. My biggest concern with Mississippi State, to be honest, this year is their defense. They have to regroup and figure out have a whole secondary. I think they're adding 4 new guys back there. So but they did get back Nathaniel Watson. So he was second in the SEC in tackles. He was a big part of that defense, so he's going to be a big help for them there. I don't know where to go with this Mississippi State team. First-year coach, as a full-time guy.
I'm a little iffy, too, on them.
I'm skeptical.
My biggest thing for their key is in the air raid system, Mike Leach done a lot of, short passes with Rodgers over the last 2 years. I think with this new offense, they're going to be trying to do some more downfield stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a key as well as running the ball. But more downfield passing is going to be an absolute key for them in this trying to do this in this offense. So that's what I have. Transfer in and biggest loss. Kevon Lee from Penn State, running back, is going to be huge for them. You were talking about the running game. I think he's going to be huge for them. And then they lost Rare Thomas to Georgia, a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's their biggest loss. Key players. Will Rogers. I mean, I don't know how Marks and the running back that I just mentioned, Lee, are going to be key players as well for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all 3 of those basically are going to be key players for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, key game, I have their key game listed as Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky has not beaten Mississippi State at home in like 10, 11, 12 years at home.
No.
It's a tough, tough place for Kentucky to go in to play, to go in and play and win.
Yeah, I agree
Matter
with
of
you.
fact, the last 2 or 3 times, I know 2 times Kentucky's went in and played terrible.
Yeah.
I think it's a key game for them, and it would be a key win. What do you have?
I think it'd be Miss Kentucky. I think that's a key game in the stretch if they want to get to a bigger bowl. I think. I think the Arizona game's pretty huge too early in the year. I think it's the second game, third game. I think
It is.
because Arizona is going to be a lot better too. So
Yeah, might be the third. I'm looking.
I think it's at Mississippi State.
Well, we can look at their schedule.
Yeah.
Southeast Louisiana, Arizona is the second game. LSU at home, at South Carolina, Alabama at home, Western Michigan home, at Arkansas, at Auburn, Kentucky at home, at Texas A&M, Southern Miss, and then the Egg Bowl is at home this year.
Yeah, it's at home this year.
Yep. They were 9-4 last year, by the way, guys. Most people probably don't realize that, but they were 9-4.
Yeah.
And was right there in the West. I don't know. I've got their win total set at 7 off of a 9-4 year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, I think that'll catch them. I've got their record at 7-5. I mean, they play a really tough looking schedule. LSU at South Carolina, Alabama, at Arkansas, at Auburn, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Ole Miss. I mean, I think 7-5 would be a really good season for them if they can get there.
I do. I agree.
All right. Next on the board is Missouri. Eli Drinkwitz. He is in his 4th year. He is 17-19. They went 6-7 last year. 3-5 in the SEC. And I'm going to give you a quick stat. Since 2014, the Missouri Tigers has not won any bowl games since 2014.
I'll give you another stat that'll blow your mind. The Tigers haven't had a winning season under Drinkwitz and haven't finished above 500 in SEC play for over 8 years.
Since 2014, that same year.
Yeah.
They have not been above 500 in the SEC or won a bowl game since 2014.
But the big thing with Missouri, though, is they have the second most returning starter in the conference. And I'll say this. The key to their season, I think, is Luther Burden, is the wide receiver. He led off freshman last year with 8 touchdowns, and they bring back the running back, Cody Schrader. He was the team leader in total yards last year. Tyrone Harper, he's an all-SEC selection on defense. And they had the league's third best defense in the country last year. Well, no, in the SEC, I mean. And their defense is always stout. Ever since I've known it, Missouri's always had a pretty stout defense. Even under Pinkel, they was good. So this could be a team to watch under the radar a little bit.
I agree with that. I'm gonna be honest with you. They got to find a quarterback.
Yeah, that's
like they've been going back and forth with guys. And Drinkwitz, he has got to find a quarterback. I don't know if it's Cook. I think that's his name. Brady Cook, I think. I don't know if it's him or not. I don't know if it's one of the freshmen or redshirt freshmen or whatever. I don't know who it is, but they got to find one that can actually lead them somewhere. And so that's a key to the season, if you ask me. They got to close out some games. They gave away 2 wins last year, Auburn and Kentucky.
Did they give away?
Honestly, they gave away. They just said, "Here you go. Here you go, man. Take it. I don't want it."
And if anybody
literally
was watching
the Auburn game, they just said, "Here."
The Auburn game was the Auburn game was basically
here you go.
Who was?
I don't want it.
Who was the worst?
Seriously, guys.
It was bad.
All right.
It was tough.
They got an offensive tackle from Eastern Michigan, Johnson, and a transfer in. And their biggest loss was wide receiver Lovett transferred to Georgia. Dominique Lovett transferred to Georgia, a wide receiver. I think that's one of their biggest losses. Key players. I'm going to give you a name, and this is a transfer. Jake Garcia, quarterback. He's a sophomore. He transferred from Miami. And I just said they got to find a quarterback. I'm not sold. They've tried him in and out, Brady Cook. Jake Garcia was a highly rated recruit. He struggled a little bit at Miami. I understand. I know that. But they have got to find and Eli Drinkwitz, I think the one thing that he has not been able to do and hammer down is a solid starting quarterback.
Yeah, he
ain't done it yet.
It's been tough.
So one of these two guys, Garcia or Cook, has got to be a solid starting quarterback for them.
Yeah, I agree.
But Luther Burden, a key player, is absolutely going to be like he's a hoss.
Yeah, he
was a 5-star kid. He's a hoss. Yeah. Key game. I'm going to be honest with you. I've got third game of the year, September 16th, Kansas State.
Yeah, that's
home.
It's probably the biggest game of the year.
Kansas State is the returning Big 12 champion. And I've got that game listed as their key game for the season. Look at their schedule. South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, and Kansas State at home. Memphis in St. Louis at Vandy. LSU at home. At Kentucky. South Carolina at home. At Georgia. Tennessee at home. Florida at home. And at Arkansas. I have their win total set at 6. Do they get there and go bowling?
It's possible.